What up, guys? Rabbit back with another video. Hopefully a quick video here. I've been watching YouTube myself, as most people would know. Not just on it, I watch it as well. And I was watching this guy trying to fix some old spell check thing. Watch him from time to time. He posted the video about 3 weeks ago as the making of this recording. And he asked a simple comment, because at the beginning of his video when he pulled this thing apart, he didn't understand what this was. So I figured, if he don't know, there's probably other people out there who also don't know. And if by chance you watch his channel, or if you're somebody in the comments section on it, I will be posting this video not just on my channel, but I'll be posting a link to my channel and this video in the comment section of his video for anybody out there who's interested in this stuff. He was asking about this little black mark here. I'll grab my pointer here. That thing right there. He didn't know if that was fixable. Now, before I go further on explaining what it is and all that stuff about it, somebody in his comment section, because he asked, what is this? Somebody mentioned, oh, I'm assuming they're joking about it, but being serious wise, it's a spell checker or some bullshit. Basically, they're making a joke, which is fine, but that's not what causes it. This here is not a problem, and I'll get into details and explaining what it is for anybody out there who doesn't understand it or what it is. It's something to do with vacuum tubes. Okay, now this is a parts component here, so it doesn't matter if I break this or even take it off. If you happen to take it off the board, just cutting it off the board, I'll break open a tube and I'll try to explain what this thing does and what it's for. Basically, a vacuum fluorescent display is what this is. This is a vacuum fluorescent display. It works off the same fundamental principles as a vacuum tube. For anybody who knows about old radio technology from like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on, back then before transistors, they had what was known as tubes, vacuum tubes. Okay? And this is a component of a vacuum tube. Well, a vacuum fluorescent display works pretty much the exact same way that a tube works, in the sense that it's got a heater, it's got a cathode, it's got screens, it's got a control grid, all that. The heater heats up the cathode for the most part, creates electrons which then fly to the plate and create the amplification. In this case, you got sulfurs added on part of it, on some of the screens, and when the electrons hit that sulfur, it illuminates it. Depending on the frequency and what you want to display there, what the signal is on that particular screen is what number appears on the screen. Okay, now this black part, it's a real simple thing. It's known as the getter. And what the getter is designed to do, and I'll show you how a getter works when I get this thing off here. I'll probably break it trying to take it off, which is perfectly fine. It's not important. This ain't a part that I'm interested in on the unit. I was interested in these switches, so the screen doesn't mean nothing to me unless I was putting in another machine just like it. Oh yeah, for Turtle out there, I got a knob part for your stereo system to fix, but that's for something else. Anyways, the way the getter works essentially is, it being a vacuum fluorescent display, it's under vacuum. These don't work very well with air in them. Okay? In fact, they don't work at all with air in them. I mean, they'll be running, you'll have your voltages, you won't see nothing on the screen though. They won't work. So what they do is they got all these components. I don't know how well the camera's going to pick up on it, especially with my lighting in here. What I did with the damn pointer. But if you look closely enough, you'll see the lines here. These are tiny wires. Those are the heaters. Heater elements. Behind that, let's see if I can get that camera focused in on the bench using the zoom. Let's see, come on, you. Bear with me, guys. Okay, you can see the lines. Those there are the heater elements from one side to the other. These two sides are connected together by those wires. Those wires are the heaters. They don't take much voltage versus a regular tube. Behind that you got a screen. And then you got your segment display behind that, which is pretty much your plate for the most part. That's all sulfur on there. Electrons shoot through there on a signal because the signal is on that screen. Negative signal, negative bias. Each one's independent. You could think of a vacuum fluorescent display as multiple tubes all in one display. If I back off just a little bit. Yeah, you can still see it. Okay. And when the electrons hit through that particular signal onto that sulfur, the sulfur illuminates. That's how it's supposed to work. This is all under a vacuum. There is no air in here. There's nothing in here. No air, no oxygen. In fact, they kind of ding. Pretty cool. Anyways, when they have these under vacuum pressure and they seal them, there's no guarantee that all the oxygen molecules and impurities are out. So that's what the getter is for. There's a type of material, I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but there's a type of material on a little silver ring in here. And what they do is after they've sealed this unit up and it's under vacuum pressure, they put a high frequency coil over it, which then heats up the getter, which then releases that chemical, creating this black splotch. And that's what that would be right there. Now, when it looks like that, that's okay. That's normal. That's not a bad thing. That's normal for these things. They're supposed to look like that. When that goes chalky white is when there's a problem. If that goes chalky white, that means that air has gotten into it. It's gotten a leak somewhere that cannot be repaired. At that point, the display is garbage. It's no longer any good, and you can't use it no more. You got to replace it. So let's just hope your machine doesn't have chalky white. This goes the same for vacuum tubes as well. So there's a getter right there. The getter itself would be on the opposite side of that. I can show it a little better with a GE tube here. An octal. That splotch, that's the getter. That's normal. If that goes chalky white, that means the tube is bad. It's gone to air. Granted, the tube can still go bad without that happening. Just wear and tear. But if that happens, that specifically means that the envelope has been broken and air and impurities has gotten inside the tube. So now it's not going to work anymore. That silver ring right there, that's your getter. You guys can see that right down in there. That's called the getter. It's a little hard to see, but it's definitely there. Now for this case and this here, the envelope seal is up underneath the pin. It's under that key there. But on the small miniature tubes, it would be up here. That's what that is. This one here, this particular vacuum fluorescent display, I'm not sure how they sealed it the way that they did. Okay, there it is. Right there is where they've melted the glass off at. But you'll find, especially in older things like the spell check he's working on, you'll find that you'll have the wires for the segments, and then there'll be this little nub, and it'll look something like this. Just like this. It'll look kind of like the end of a light bulb sticking off. That's the seal. That's your envelope. That's where the glass rod was attached to the tube during manufacturing. Now they put that rod into the vacuum pump. They suck the air out, and while it's under vacuum, they use a heating torch and they clip that right off. Now it's sealed. Then at that point, they take them and they flip them into this coil that comes down around it. It heats it up with high frequency. You'll know it'll heat it up because it'll glow in there. It'll heat it up, and then all this will go from being clear glass to this metallic, like silverish black. And from there, again, you can see the getter right there. The light's kind of reflecting off of the glass, but you can see it right in there. And they work under pressure like that. That's why they make a pop noise when they break open. In fact, I'll bust a couple open here. See, I got a lot of tubes and shit from old machines. It's not a big deal if I were to waste a few. And each one of these pins connect to a component inside. But you definitely want it to look like that. If it looks chalky white, then it's broken air. This here would be a magic eye tube. Not a circular one, a slotted one, but that one's actually easier to see the getter in. Right there. That big silver ring there. There's a kind of deposit material in there that deposits itself up here on the top. I've got an old 1930s octal tube up here that broke apart, unfortunately, but it happens. There's the interior. This is a audio output tube. Here's your plate. There's your plate right here. These are mica insulators. Plate right down there in the middle of that glass. If you see that longer little small glass cylinder there, that right there is the envelope where they sealed it off through the key. Okay. Here's the hole where it actually sucked in. It's a little nub, it goes all the way down. This is part of the getter right here. They would heat this piece of metal up and it would deposit on the side of the glass. In this case, down at the bottom. This is just some darkened paint that they put in there. But you see that chalky whiteness there? That was what's left of a getter material. And it's a mix of different deposits and silvers and metals and oxides and stuff. I don't know all that's in the formula. They're all different. But I'll show you what happens when you break one of these tubes open. Let's go with this. This is a 12AU6. So now, look how nice and shiny and black that is. Now that works. Its main job and purpose is to pull out any impurities, any oxygen particles, any of that stuff from inside the tube and suck that to it. Keep all that out of there. So let's see here. That should quickly turn like a foggy white once it breaks. It should start going. Might take it a while, but it should start doing it. Yeah, there it goes. You can kind of see it. Let's see. It's already somewhat beginning to clear up a bit. Hasn't really gone white yet. But yeah, see, there it goes. It's starting to turn white from underneath. It's a pretty good thick mixture. So it takes it some time there. I don't know how well that camera's getting it. Cameras, they never work on what you want them to, or focus on what you want them to. See how it's already turning white here? That means that the tube's gone bad. It's gone to air. And now that's going to circulate all the way around. It doesn't do it instantaneous. It does it slowly. But now that's opened. And we pretty much get into it here. Break it apart. I'll show you the internal structures of it the best I can to my best abilities. There's your getter right there, that piece of metal. This piece of metal right here actually holds the getter part itself. The getter itself is this little bar. Now on the other ones it's the big round thing. Come on, camera, focus. Let's see if I go distant wise. Come on, you. You just had it. There it goes. Right there. That bar, it's got a slot cut into it. And that right there is the getter. That's what heats up. And then the material bounces off of that and accumulates on that top bulb part. And when the thing gets fired up for the very first time and runs, that absorbs all the oxygen particles and any other particles that may still be inside the tube after manufacturing. If it goes white, that means air got into the tube. Seeing as how I'm this far in, I might as well take apart the tube entirely and show you all how it works, huh? For the most part, how it fundamentally works. See if I can find the damn tube here, huh? There it is. Okay, there's the tube. I'm going to start plucking it apart piece by piece, and I'll bring those pieces right back down here on the bench. Starting with the getter. Just going to cut that little bugger off. There's the getter. So, to him, if he does wind up seeing this video, I hope he does. If he does wind up seeing this video, though, not just to everybody else, but to him as well, I hope it explains a little bit. I hope he learns something. That black part is nothing to be repaired. That's how they come manufactured. Now, as of today, you're not going to find that in LCDs or any of that stuff. So if you find some black shit like that, an LCD or an LED display or a, how do you say, any kind of liquid crystal, any kind of LED, plasma, OLED, any of that stuff, yeah, that might be something bad and not repairable. This here, this is a mica insulating sheet here. It does two jobs. It not only insulates from current flow in certain directions, but it also acts like a brace up against the envelope, which would be the glass bulb part. It also acts as a structure to hold all the components. There should be two of these, one on either side. They're made out of mica crystal. And unfortunately, I don't have tweezers. They are very fragile. So, as you see, I'm pretty much destroying it. I practically destroyed that grid in the process. And I've damaged it a bit, but definitely get a good look on the inside here, interior-wise. Come on, camera, focus. Those are your grids. You've got your plate, which has the high voltage, your heaters in the center, just like the wires in the screen, and then you got your grids. Now in this case you don't have sulfur, unlike the screen, the vacuum fluorescent display. These are vacuum tubes. They work the same way, but they have some slight differences. Your plate is your output. That's where your signal is going to come to, and your amplification is going to come out of. You've got your screen grid, which helps keep RF and certain frequencies off of it, kind of protect it. You got your control grid, which would be one of these inner ones. Just depends on the design of the tube itself. You got your heater. Your heater heats up the cathode, which then produces electrons, which flow off to a positively charged plate. You put a negative bias, a negative charge on your control grid with a signal in that frequency, and when you have the signal going, the electrons flow through it at a higher rate within that frequency range to the plate, which then shoot out the plate, go into another tube, get amplified there, processed there, and so on and so forth, to eventually it reaches your output stage or your video stage or whatever it is the device is. In this case, these are radio tubes and a stereo vacuum fluorescent. But any kind of vacuum tube system works the same way for the most part. Now, gotta break a little more of this glass off the bottom so I can get down there to those pins so I can cut everything. In fact, you can kind of see the heater right down there. That little white material there in the middle, that's the heating element. Let's see here. I can see it pretty damn well right there. That white part there is the heating element. Now you got two kinds, directly heated cathodes and then indirectly heated cathodes, which would be one with a heater behind it that just heats it up indirectly from distance, and then one that the cathode is the heater at the same time, and it directly heats it. Power goes into it and directly heats the thing. In fact, I'm not even going to cut the cathode. I'm going to try to slide it out of the center. Again, it all depends on what kind of tube it is and the design of the tube and its job. Come on, you. Got a piece of metal here that just does not want to cut. There it goes. There we are. This probably ain't going to want to show up very well on the camera, but Hopefully this ain't too long of a video. There's your cathode right there. Cathode and heater. This is a directly heated cathode. It's a piece of very thin, either tungsten or aluminium or whatever wire that is dipped in a solution that produces electrons when heated. And the chemicals for that vary. Well, it depends on the manufacturer usually. I'm gonna get down to the grids and shit here. Should be able to just take the plate off from it. Because that should be held on by 2 points on either side. There's your plate. This thing is going to come out of. And there's your internal part, your grids. Obviously I damaged them a little, but not a big deal. It's part of the plate, so it would be connected like the plate would be. And these wires get thinner and thinner with each pass, each one. None of them directly touch each other either. They're completely by themselves. They're connected by one lead at the bottom. Each screen or grid or whichever you want to call it literally does a different function. All made the same way, just different lengths, different sizes. See, now that I got that all smashed up, it's not going to want to come apart so easily. But I figured this would be easier making a video here about this than trying to post a comment on it and it being like a paragraph long. Nobody's got time to read for that. Maybe not even time for the damn video, but there's one. Let's see, camera focus. Give it something to focus on too. There's some fine wiring. Maybe I can lay them out grid by grid and then bring the camera in on them. It might function a little better that way. Just bear with me for a moment. Oh, it's magnetic. Of course. It's alright, I can line them up for the most part. Mind you, each one of these grids sits in between the other ones before it reaches the plate. Okay, here's the cathode. Directly heated cathode. That material on the wire there, that's part of the heating element. I know that can emit too, though, for the most part. There's our grids. Here's your center grid here. It's got the smallest wires too. Your middle grid and then your outer grid And then of course you would have your plate. Then the cathode would sit in the middle, and you'd have your heating element down that tiny tube. See if I can zoom in on that little one a little better. Come on, camera. You can focus better than that. There it goes. That's the center one. With it being zoomed, it looks fairly large, but it's not. I can assure you, it's really small. So that's essentially how tubes work, for the most part. In fact, might be able to see the grids down in this one. Right down in there. Pretty neat how this stuff works. Now these all were replaced with transistors, obviously. We don't do tubes anymore, for the most part. I mean, you can get tube amplifiers and shit if you really wanted to. But 99.9% of the shit out there is all transistor, solid state, microchip, shit of that nature of today. Now if you find anything black like in there on an LCD or an LED or some bullshit like that display wise, there's something wrong with the display. But in an old vacuum fluorescent display, that's normal. You want it to be black. If you don't see that somewhere in there, there's a problem. And in some vacuum fluorescent displays, there's two getters, one on either side. Some have one, some have two. It all depends. Depends on the make, model, and design of the screen. In this one's case, it's one. One side, I guess that was enough. See, if you look close enough there, you can see a little pit. And that's where that little nub was on the opposite side that they melted down. That's where it's sealed at. You even got all the little wiring that runs all the segments. You can, and if you look it up on YouTube, you can find people who've actually converted vacuum fluorescent displays into audio tubes by combining all the screens together, all the plates together, and all the control grids together independently, and then ran it through with an audio signal in and out. And then of course the heater is these two wires here and these two wires here. Those heaters are all connected together. See, this has a broader span of heaters because of the way it functions and it's spread out. So it's got to heat the segments along lengths instead of just one central heater in the middle and it going around like a spiral or whatever. Just figured I'd make that little video there. Again, hopefully this video wasn't too long. I got some other videos I need to post on some stuff. But for now, there you go. That's how all that works. And of course the bottom would plug into the tube socket of whatever machine. And from there, it'll function. That's if the tube's good. Now don't get me wrong. Every single time you see these go fog white, that means the tube's no good. But just because that hasn't gone fog white does not mean that the tube isn't still good. It could still be bad. Any of these elements could burn out. All it takes is one of these little fine wires to break, and the tube is damaged at that point. It doesn't work. The heater could burn out. Any of that. They can break still and get shorts and all that stuff. But if you ever see them where this is not black, it's guaranteed bad. That includes the LCD screens or the vacuum fluorescent screens. Display, screen, whatever you want to call it. Black on this is good. Black on this is bad. Hopefully that'll help anybody out. Not just him and his question on what that is, but anybody else on top of that. That's the whole point of this. It's to learn. The whole point of working on this stuff. I've messed with this stuff all my life for the most part. I pretty much know what I'm doing for the most part on it. But some other people like him don't. They mess with it, they tinker with it from time to time and whatever. They know the basics. They don't know everything about it. So hopefully this has helped them, and as Louis Rossmann would say, I hope you learned something. Till the next video, Rabbit out.